On two lessons from the Bible. One is that great story of Abraham. Abraham, you saw the map up there as the story was being written. You saw the map of the trip that he took from that ancient place on the Euphrates River, and traveled 1,000 miles through before he got to Canaan with his troop. They stayed a while in Haran, a place along the way. I don't know why they stayed there. Maybe biblical scholars have probably researched that and know, but I don't know why he stayed in Haran, and I don't know how long he stayed there. But I know that he gathered up more people to join him on his journey, and went on then to Canaan. And then they ducked down into Egypt for a little while, where there was an incident or two, and then back to Canaan, the promised land. I'll say more about that, but Abraham was called to leave that place of comfort, that place, the only place he had always known. And this morning I asked two of my family who are visiting with us about what that's like for them, because I want to first focus on little Belle. And Belle, are you not too afraid to come up here? Okay. All right. Belle is from Thailand. She is spending the year with my daughter's family in Winter Springs, going to school there. And Belle, you left your mother in Thailand. Just you and your mother in your family. You left her in Thailand. She encouraged you to go forth and to come here as an exchange student for the year. So, Belle, what was that like for you? You must have been afraid at times. So, I want you to tell them, as best you can. When Belle first came, she knew very little English. She has done remarkably well, and we're so proud of her. And we had a wonderful time with her. She'll be leaving in June, is it? She'll be leaving and going away from us again. Tell them about what you were afraid of. Yeah. Hold it up close so I can be sure and hear you. Okay?
I think I'm afraid of something that I don't know. When I get off from the plane, I don't know who that I'm gonna meet, and I don't know what's gonna happen. Who's that I'm gonna live with here. So I really afraid, and yeah.
Yes. So you got off the plane, you would know who you were going to meet or what it was going to be like. Were they going to be monsters or angels? You didn't know. But when you got off the plane, in Orlando, you had seen a picture. And so, who did you see?
I met Lena, who's my coordinator.
Coordinator.
Yes. And my mom, my host mom, she there. Yeah, and here at the airport.
And then you were comforted? I think you told me that once you saw them, it made a difference. Yeah. Once you saw Lena and you saw your new mother, Krista?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, you mean the first impression?
Yes. You were afraid until you saw them.
Oh, yes, because I exactly know. Oh, they will pick me up, and I meet someone that I can live with, and I can believe in them.
Yes. Awesome, honey. Thank you. And that's very sweet. And I would like to have my granddaughter Aubrey, whose name I mispronounced earlier in my anxiety. Aubrey, would you step up, please? Aubrey is, are you 16 now? Yes. Aubrey's 16. And the sixth of my grandchildren. She was number 6. Born in my birthday month, the only one. Yes. Well, I asked Aubrey up here because Aubrey is going to go on an exchange in the coming year. And in July, is it she leaves?
Yes.
In July. So, Aubrey, what's it like to leave the place of comfort?
I was I'm going to Sweden, by the way. So I leave in 2 months to go spend the next year of my life in Sweden. I will be living with a host family and going to high school and living a normal life. So, yes. Yeah. So everything, I was very excited the entire time up until probably about 2 weeks ago, and then I started to actually get really nervous. I don't have a family yet. I actually got it yesterday, but I didn't have a family up until yesterday. I am leaving my friends, my family, everybody. I have no idea who I'm going to be with. I don't know who I'm going to make friends with. So I started to really get nervous about leaving everything that I'm comfortable with. But now I'm all excited all over again. I think I'm doing fine. So there's that.
So once you saw your family, once you knew,
Yes.
and saw pictures, or did you Skype? What happened?
Yes. So yesterday I got home and I got an email from my family, and they sent pictures of them and their dogs and their bunnies and their lake by their house and their sailboat. They're so cute. And everything else. They told me that I actually have the same birthday as their 14-year-old child, and their son is going on exchange to Virginia. They just seem great, and I am Skyping them at 2 today.
Well, so now you've met 2 beautiful members of my beautiful family. Yeah. So Abraham was called by God to leave his place of comfort and to go to a place that he didn't know. Not only that, God made him this ridiculous promise. He was an old man, maybe a little younger than me, but old. And God said to him, I'm going to bless all the nations of the earth through you, because Sarah, your aged wife, is going to have a baby. And so he told Sarah, and they both got the biggest laugh out of it. They really did. They laughed. And then it turned out, though, that God gave them Isaac, and Isaac was to be the fulfillment of the promise, because through Isaac they were to have descendants, and these descendants would bless the nations of the earth. That was the promise. Abraham became a man of faith. He became a true knight of faith. I'm not sure. Yes, you see, there are pictures up there. The one at the very top on the right, picture of Abraham a little later in his life when Isaac is growing up. And, God was always talking to Abraham. When God talks to us, it has to be from that inner voice. But God was talking to Abraham in that ancient time, and he said to Abraham, I want you to, he was challenging Abraham's faith. He said, I want you to go up on Mount Moriah. I want you to build an altar. I want you to tie this boy up, put him on the altar, and use a knife and a dagger to kill him. And so Abraham was really, really, really upset about that, but can you imagine being asked to do that? I have 2 boys. Sometimes they're trouble growing up, but I never wanted to kill them. Well, maybe. Oh, yes, Kristen says, yeah, you can. Yeah. But what a horrible thing to think God really actually. There was a day in the day of sacrifices, and they usually sacrificed animals. But here God's telling him to sacrifice his son. So, that's reminiscent, if you think about it, with the Creator God coming down to earth and sacrificing his son being sacrificed in Jesus. Well, it's sort of a replication of that, of this thing that happened with Jesus. But as Abraham lifted the knife to stab his son, God spoke again and said, "No, stay your hand." He said to him, "Look over there. There's a ram, a male goat. There's a ram over there in the bush. Take the ram. Sacrifice the ram, and let Isaac live." So that he was delivered. When I was a small boy out on the plains of Texas, we lived out on the farm 10 miles from town, And that was a long time ago. And one of the things that went on in those days was there would be people who traveled around the countryside to sell their wares. And we had a man who worked with what they call the McNess Company. Did any of you ever hear of the McNess Company? Well, anyway, the McNess Company would send him around, and he would come to our house several times a year. His name was Mr. Black. He dressed in black. He had a club foot, so that got a lot of sympathy for him with us. He would come into our living room, we would sit down, and he would take out he'd carry this big, huge bag. It had all kinds of things in it, like liniments and vanilla extract and all kinds of cures for diseases, etc. And he would display them, and he would then talk about each one and try to get my dad and mom to agree to purchase it. And my mom always bought vanilla extract and a few other things. We might buy a little liniment for the horses, every once in a while, rub on the horse's leg, whatever. But when he would try to sell each one of those, my dad would say to him, you know, we don't really have that kind of money. I can't afford that. I can't afford that. Again, I can't afford that. I can't afford that. Mr. Black would always say, there's always a ram in the bush. That's why I told that story. So, Mr. Black lives on in my memory. You know, we are afraid. We have our fears. All of you raised your hands, almost all of you, when we ask about that. Back in the middle of March, I went up to Maryland. Dustin and I went up to my son's home in Eldersburg, Maryland, and the event was the baptism of my great-grandchild and Eli. Eli was 5 years old, and he was going to be baptized, and along with that, we were going to celebrate his birthday, because that was his birthday as well. When I'm standing in their community hall at the Wesley Freedom United Methodist Church in Eldersburg, looking back of me, and there's a huge panel, and on that panel where they put notices, there was card after card with notes on it. And what I found out was these were little messages or little notes from a group of the kids in that church. It's a huge church. And a group of the kids had gone on a retreat. They were ages 9 to 14. And they had asked them, if you weren't afraid, what would you do? If you weren't afraid, what would you do? And so it was a challenge to them. And one of them said, well, I would tell people what I'm afraid of if I weren't afraid. But I made copies. Actually, Dustin took copies of them at my request because I didn't have my phone with me. And he took copies, and later I could take them off of the photo. One boy said, if I weren't afraid, I would stand up to my dad. And that was troubling to hear, but it left you to wonder what his dad was like and what their relationship was like and why maybe he feared his dad. Another one said, I would go in pursuit of my dream. If I weren't afraid, I'd go in pursuit of my dream. And one of them said, I would step outside my comfort zone and talk to people, and I'd express myself. Isn't that beautiful? One of them said, if I weren't afraid, I would dress the way I want to. And I would take more risks. And I would trust God. A real budding Abraham here. I would let people label me. I would not let people label me, and I would be myself. Wow, how about that? We can spend a lifetime trying to get to the point where we can be ourselves. Just be ourselves. And that's what God calls us to do, to fulfill that self inside of us. One said, I would express the real truth of who I am. And that reminds us of people that we stand up for in this church, in our open and affirming stance that we take to enable people to be, to really be who they are. I would admit to all my sins, says this one kid, and I'd tell the whole truth always. Well, telling the whole truth, I don't know, sometimes it's a little scary to do that, isn't it? Tell the whole truth. Sometimes you just you avoid telling the whole truth. So, I tell the whole truth. And I really love this one. If I weren't afraid, I would go skydiving. Well, I'm going to go skydiving. I'm going to go hot air balloon riding. My kids gave me that gift as a request, as my request. It was a year ago Christmas when they gave me that, so I've been building up. I'm going to go in a hot air balloon. Dustin says he'll go with me, but he really kind of quakes when he says that. You'll go? All right. So I would go skydiving, and I would get this. He didn't say go to New Smyrna Beach, but I would swim with the sharks. If I weren't afraid, I'd swim with the sharks. And the last one. If I weren't afraid, I would be a very different person because too often I am controlled by my fears. That's the challenge. So, when you're stuck, when you're indecisive, when you're afraid, when you procrastinate, when you panic at the thought of whatever fear confronts you, what do? Maybe you become obedient, like Abraham, and you follow the call. Maybe you become obedient, like Jesus, when you see the figure leaning over on the rock. Reminds me of Gethsemane. I'm sure that's what it was meant to portray. When Jesus prayed, saying, hey, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But he became obedient. He became obedient. So what do we do when we're afraid? We face the fear. We leave our comfort zone. We leave our hiding place. And we become obedient to the voice within. We have Abraham. We have Jesus. We have a whole host of thousands of years of the prophets in the Old Testament, of the characters in the New Testament, of Jesus and Abraham and Moses, this huge cloud of witnesses that have left their comfort zone and followed the voice within. The best conclusion, I think, to this message is to hear again some of the words from Philippians. You must have the same attitude that Jesus had. Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God a thing to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges, gave up his hiding place. He took the humble position of a slave, and he was born as a human being. And when he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God. And he died a criminal's death on the cross. Therefore God, and this is one of my favorite passages in the whole New Testament, therefore God has elevated him to the place of highest honor and given him the name above all other names, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue declare that Jesus Christ is Lord. Amen.
Amen.